every good script that I know, every great film that I know, I like the story, the flow of the action, and the fact that there are believable human characters who are behaving in a way that is consistent with their character. There's no surprises except when a person reveals something that you have prepared the audience to see. It's a question of character, destiny, place in relationships. All these things contribute to great scripts. Ben Hecht, Charles MacArthur, I like some of the scripts that Frank Capra did as a director. I very much enjoyed Robert Towne's work in Chinatown, Waylon Green, who wrote The Wild Bunch. These are all screenwriters who have lent great dignity to the movies. The internet is not a fad. It is with us as long as there's going to be electricity and computers and video screens. As a matter of fact, it will probably become even more intertwined with our lives in every way, every day. The trick is, just as in life we are overwhelmed by images and sounds and weather and politics, because the internet is so much a part of most people's lives, we find it overwhelming, but the proportion of good to basura, to dreck, is the same. You know, there are a few things in life that are important. There are a few things on the internet that are important. Because of 500 years of books, we kind of know how to look for information in the traditional media. In the new media, there's such a flood of information, we are still searching for guides, for instructions, for pointers along the way. In medieval times, it was the church. Church told us what was good, what was bad, that we said to the priest, okay, we're going to read that book, we're not going to read that book. Now there are no priests in the internet. There is no authority. Everybody is in charge, and everybody is a peon. So that's the difficult adjustment that people have to make. And to people like myself who remember the world before the internet and participate in the world of the internet, it's a challenge, it's a struggle to figure out if the old rules apply to the new world. I have been a professional writer for 50 years, half a century. For most of that time, I was always paid for writing. That was always my motivation. I wrote well, always, because I am a professional, but like a carpenter, I am sometimes not responsible for the design of the house. I just make sure that the doors open and close and that the floor is even. My process is strongly based on an outline, on a concept of the whole story. I kind of have to see the whole picture before I can begin with the first page. If I know where my destination is, then I can go there with few problems. If I lose track of my destination, I find myself doing duplicate work, doing work that is useless, and troubling myself, falling asleep, worrying, or losing sleep. But as long as I know where I'm going, I'm pretty secure. Every now and then, you have an idea that is so strong that you have to begin working on it right away, not knowing where you're going, and hoping that the process will take you to a good destination, or at least to a destination where you can rest and say, that's done. In both cases, starting writing is incredibly difficult. Finishing writing is easy. A friend of mine once said, It's a writer named Charlie Hauck, television writer in Los Angeles, said, ideas abound. Everybody has ideas. It's the damn words that cause all the problems. You have to pick the right ones and you have to put them in the right order. And that's what writers do well. Writing is easy, writing well is hard. Important piece of advice for people who are going to be studying screenwriting. Do not rely on textbook models like Robert McKee. He is el muerto de cinema. He is a maker of formulas, not of stories. And that is the problem with most textbooks. And this is difficult because it is hard for a beginning writer to find a screenplay to read. Screenplays that are published, and there are many screenplays that are published, are not the actual document from which the movie was made. They are a transcription of the movie when it was finished. And the finished film is very often quite different from the script. And to understand how good a script is, you have to read that collection of pages that the director had in his pocket on the first day of shooting. And those are not easily found. You have to have friends in the business, you look around, you try to find scripts that are representative of real work, not after the fact. So, but you can study, and of course the thing that you can do, that everybody can do, is watch movies, watch television, listen to the dialogue, watch the story. Do not get lost in the experience, because then you're just an audience. As a technician, you have to examine the nuts and the bolts and the joinery, the carpentry that makes it work. It's the way, if you are a citizen and you walk into a palace, you go, whoo, amazing. If you're an engineer or architect or an artist, you walk in a palace and you say, how did they get that ceiling not to fall down? How did they make that door so perfectly square, and yet it's on a slope going up with stairs? When you look at those details, that's what the screenwriter does. You look at all the component parts of the story and see how they fit together. Then when you start writing your story, you are aware of the problems. And you can, like all students, you can look to the great models, the great movies, to see how they solve the problems. Or you can solve, if you're a genius, you can solve the problems on your own. But most of the time, every problem you face, somebody else has faced before and come up with a good solution. And your job is to find that solution, see if it works for you. And of course, you have to write a lot. You have to write 100 words for every word you keep. The writer is the artist of original creation. The director and the actors and the cameraman and everyone else in the production, except the composer, are artists of interpretation, not original creation. It would be foolish for an artist of interpretation to shut out the artist of original creation, because what we do in our business is collaborate. It is a collaboration. There was never a movie made without a script. Nobody ever shot 100 blank pages and said, here's your movie. It begins on the page, and good directors know this and welcome a writer to the process. Insecure directors, and I would say that is 90% of directors, fear the second creative voice, especially the original creative voice. I'm speaking of projects that did not originate with the director, projects that originated elsewhere. It's almost essential. In my most successful film, in Jaws, I literally lived in the same house with the director. I wrote while we were filming. We collaborated on every aspect of the scenario. And he was, of course, the auteur of the film. It was his genius that made the film, but he worked with others, with the designers of the shark, with the technicians who made the shark work, with the editor who received an Academy Award for her cutting of the picture. It's a collaborative medium. We work with others. And the writer should always be included in the process. And the writer has to understand that during production, his authority is secondary to the director, and he shouldn't go telling the actors what their lines are, what their motivations are. He should talk to the director. Everything goes through the director. The director is the supreme authority. But he is not the only authority, and he is not the only one who knows the story. Unless he's keeping secrets, and that's not a good way to make a good movie. So, to directors out there who are listening, invite the writer. It helps, it doesn't hinder. Unfortunately, writers, like many artists who work by themselves, are insecure about their position, and they tend to contribute to the self-loathing image of the writer. They tend to buy into the writer as, a fifth wheel. Very often, the writers do a poor job of portraying themselves in a film. For a variety of reasons. It's the history of cinema, the history of American cinema. But every now and then, someone gets it right. Charlie Kaufman got it right in his films, although he's a very conflicted writer. It's hard to find a movie that you can point to and say, aha, this is where the writer shines. And I think writers have to do a better job of portraying themselves if they're going to write movies about movies. I should add that there's just one line from this old Hollywood movie with Kirk Douglas called The Bad and the Beautiful, where the studio head says, writers, what does the public know about writers? They think the actors make up all the words as they go along. And they don't. You have only to watch actors on television, on talk shows, to realize that many of them are inarticulate without a writer. We find it overwhelming.
That since it's so familiar with